good morning. It is time for the Mike Hewitt Show. Brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And now your host, Mike Hewitt. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Listen, on the line with us, folks, we have got Patrick Devlin. Am I saying your name, Mr. Devlin, correctly?
That's correct.
Very nice. And you are the Secretary-Treasurer for the Greater Detroit Building, Construction, and Trades Council. Is that also correct?
Well, I'm head of the Secretary-Treasurer of the Michigan Building and Construction Trades. That represents over 100,000 hardworking men and women in the organized construction industry.
Very, very nice. So you're more than Detroit, you're the entire state.
Yep, that's it all.
Very, very nice. Listen, welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show. Just so everyone knows, in the studio with us is Jim Riley riding shotgun.
Good morning.
Matt Wiedenhoeft is going to join us. And then also, as always, Brian Thomas is keeping the bowling ball out of the gutters. So we appreciate that effort. That's probably the most stringent of all of the jobs we've got here.
Is that what I do here?
That is the function.
The bowling ball guy. I like that.
This is the bowling ball guy. He's like the bumper.
That's what I do here?
In the alley.
There we go. Yeah, that's a bowling ball guy.
Patrick is wondering, what the heck have I done to myself? Listen, coming up in the next segment, folks,
that'll wake you up in the morning.
Oh, yeah, that absolutely does. In the next segment, just so everyone understands why that is, in the next segment, the Enigma Report, as this show does, I think almost every week now, is going to be a little bit about the country mouse and the city mouse and the ways that affects politics and some of the cures to the problems that automatically come from it. And when I was doing research on that part of this today's episode, I found Tarzan Goes to New York, and I just couldn't resist asking Brian to plug that in because it was such a great dramatization of some of the problems we face in America between the city mouse and the country mouse. Listen, Patrick, on your topic, I'm reading through it. It looks like, tell me if my notes are wrong, but it looks like what you're hoping to do is access some of the funds that the Obama administration has set up for education for higher learning. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're getting some grant money, but most of our monies, we operate on about a $50 million budget just in the Michigan, in our state in Michigan, to train not only apprentices, but it also goes towards journeyman upgrading for all new technology that comes into the industry. So,
listen, here's what I'm hoping you'll do, because I don't know. First off, you and I'm very convinced from what I've read are after the same end result. I don't know that we would necessarily agree on the path to get there. And I say that because, and please, by the way, push back. If I'm wrong, it's okay, let me know. Mm-hmm. But it feels like the more that we look to government for these solutions, the more cost ineffective higher education becomes. We did an episode quite some time ago focused solely on, in fact, the whole hour was just about higher education. And we did the math from 1980 forward, and we've had a 1,000% increase in tuition. And so the more government has helped, the fewer people that actually have access to it. Now you've got just nationwide, you've got tens of thousands, actually millions of people that are not graduating from college because they can't afford it. So they walk away without a degree, owing tens of thousands of dollars in what appears to be a second mortgage. And I'm thinking, wow, this system's broken, and I don't know that each one of these answers does anything but add to the problem.
Right. No, and I agree with a lot of that. Our funding for training in the state of Michigan and really throughout the country is that we're all privately funded through our collective bargaining contributions. And again, like I said, our annual budget for training is about $50 million a year here. Nationally, it's about $1 billion a year.
Patrick, are you frustrated, as I am, with what we're doing in public education, K through 12, in terms of the absence or near absence of trade training?
Oh, I think that's had an effect, negative effect on us. I graduated from high school back in 1970 and got into the apprenticeship programs. Apprenticeship program through the sprinkler fitters in about 72. I dabbled in college, but all through my apprenticeship and journeyman training, I earned why I learned, and that's a mantra that we like to use. The college isn't for everybody, and neither is the construction industry. But like all industries, we're suffering. The baby boomers are going out, and we think it's a great opportunity, especially with the spike in the industry and the work that is starting to pop up just in the southeast Michigan area. We're looking at a projected $5 billion worth of investment in construction over the next 3 years.
I think one of the impediments that you must have to wrestle with is being involved in trades, and this is trade unions as I understand it, is that there's somewhat of a political rub against unionism in general, because I think the image of it is Teamsters and UAW. And listen, I've got 4 son-in-laws. One of them is a plumber, so he's very involved in his trade union, and it doesn't resemble anything that I've seen in the UAW or from the UAW or Teamsters, etc. And in fact, most of what he gets from that association is a lot of education that he wouldn't have gotten anywhere else.
Correct. We don't resemble that. Our people don't get paid if they don't go to work, and not to say that
same darn thing happens to me.
It's just the way the nature of the beast. When it rains out and the weather is too bad. Unfortunately, our people have to stay home. But it's been a great career for me through my life, and for the men and women that I represent. It just seems to be everybody that's in it and sticks with it just loves it. So,
one of the things that I'm reading while you're talking, and it talks about the gap between employers and employees in terms of what training level they're at versus what is needed. Mm-hmm. Can you fill us in a little bit on that?
Well, we're noticing it, especially in the inner city. I do a lot of work. We've got a program called Access for All that brings in candidates that need, a little brushing up on their math skills. The construction industry requires about a first year, high school, 10th, 11th grade algebra, first year geometry, communication skills. So this program has really been a success here. We've graduated all of our graduates, probably about 30 of them just in the last year and a half, have all been placed with contractors for step-up programs and apprenticeship opportunities. So that's one of the things going back on public education that we try to work with the high schools and even grade schools about what our candidates do need in the way of math skills. So, and we've seen some improvements, but we're not where we need to be.
What do you think is there a single bullet cure?
The individuals that seem to have success, get it. They understand that, math is very important. Just because you're not going to college, we're looking almost for the same kind of candidate that would seek out a college degree. So, we just stress that, and we can't do it early enough. I mean, we go into the high school level, but at that time, most kids already have a pretty good idea of what they want to be in life. And working through counselors and that through the high schools, it still seems to be a stigma. If you don't go to college, then you're somewhat of a failure in life, and that couldn't be farther from the truth.
What we've talked about on the show before, and what statistics bear out, is that plus or minus 95% of the academic side of the curriculum in public schools is geared towards college preparatory courses.
Right.
And the reality of that is that with all of their effort, they have not changed the math in the last 20 years. And the math is that one of every 1 of every 4 high school graduates will graduate from college, and the other 3 of every 4 don't. And you go, well, what happened to them? Mm-hmm. And that's where I think the trade side of this is so critical. We've done entire shows, and I'm really passionate on this topic. When I look at things like Vocational Technical Center, to me it's a huge missed opportunity, because in my opinion it's become a place where they, and I don't want to paint with a huge brush, it's not everybody, but it feels like they put a lot of people in there that skip school a lot, that are just not academically inclined. So they've pushed them into this dumping ground, for lack of better words, rather than producing a certificate, because they've had some really great training that an employer in the trades can say, wow, I want that person because they invested 2 years into that trade program. But it doesn't turn into be a viable result. Am I all wet on this? What's your opinion?
No, I agree. And the public schools, through whatever the funding and everything that don't support those, those programs, we see a negative effect on it. Kids really, most of the high schools we go into, they crave that learning, especially in the inner city. We just completed a program. The city took over some 70-some properties from the Detroit Public Schools, and we worked with about 50 young men and women ages between 18 and 24, and started the program back in June. It just come to completion last week, and we graduated about 50. I think there was about 50 students that went through the program. But from their skills at start to what the finished product was amazing, and a number of the graduates have been placed into step-up programs and apprenticeship programs. In fact, we've got 8 starting with the roofing, the roofer's trade. They'll be working on the arena project, and all the opportunities that are coming up, especially in the southeast Michigan area.
Patrick, I got a question for you. This is Matt.
Hi, Matt.
And when I graduated, which wasn't that long ago, 99, I am the baby in the room.
You know the cliche, I've got shoes older than him.
Legitimately, I've seen him wear them. I remember looking at my yearbook and seeing guys who were graduating saying that their future goal or plan was being a tool and die maker or a machinist. Are you seeing that now with these graduates? Because I'm not sure they even know it exists unless they happen to be in the school that you're visiting.
Yeah, that's, again, we're lacking the push, and I know the counselors out there do push it, but it's secondary to college. So yeah, we still are, painted with a brush that, if all else fails, then maybe you want to look at, the alternative, which would be construction trades. We don't look at it that way, but yeah, there is a stigma attached to it, and it isn't like, even when I graduated back in the 70s, it was that way. I mean, I grew up downriver, and you had the opportunity to go to one of the car plants or steel manufacturers or the building trades, and very few of us went out to college, and almost everybody that I've kept in contact with the old neighborhood have all been success stories in their own right.
I was listening to someone involved in construction in Wisconsin on a radio show. He was saying that they have any number, apparently a fairly significant number of openings in the skilled trades in the Wisconsin area. Jobs that are paying $60,000 up into over $100,000 a year, and they cannot find qualified candidates. Now, your group is encouraging and working with the schools so that you can, I would imagine, fill this need here in the state of Michigan. 2 questions. One is, are in fact, do these jobs exist here in Michigan that if the students had whatever the requirements be, verbal skills, math skills, or whatever, are these jobs available, and what are you doing to fill these jobs if they're there? And number 2, what do you do with a city like Detroit? And it's certainly not unique, but the most recent report on Detroit schools was that 4% of the 8th graders were proficient in math. They don't teach much math beyond 4%. They don't teach arithmetic anyway beyond the 8th grade. Is it fixable? So are the jobs available? And if you've got school systems that are clearly 4%, you'd almost have to try hard to be that inept.
Yeah.
Well, what's happening?
Yeah, I just reviewed some of the data on the numbers, and they are appalling. They really are. Unfortunately for us, I mean, we are set up that we can help people with those math skills, but we're not. The apprenticeship programs aren't set up for remedial. We do have other programs that do help our candidates get ready for the trades. One of our other outreach situations is we've referred to it as helmets to hard hats, and that's to transition our military veterans coming back from the conflicts. We're getting great candidates from that experience. So we're out there looking at all walks of life of what the fit is, and I think we're very successful. It isn't, I say that we're out there looking. It's not that we're in need of candidates. There's always a sufficient number of people wanting to get into our programs. It's just finding the right people that are going to stay with it and stick with it. It's a very a very trying and difficult craft. Any of the crafts that I represent, and that's it's one of the things that you might have the skill sets of the math and the all the other stuff to become a good skilled trades person, but do you like heights? Can you work out in the elements? Can you endure, the in-betweens of not working, because this industry is so cyclical. So you make your money when you can, but there's those dry times. We just come out of one of the worst recessions in this industry that I've ever seen. It was about an 8 to 10 year drought. Our people couldn't even travel to other states to find employment. So we lost a lot of people but we're bringing a lot of those people back. But like all industries, we're going through the baby boomer situation, and there are a lot of opportunities. And yes, there are people that are applying. We're probably training this year about 1,100 apprentices in our program, and probably will double that next year.
Tell me this, Patrick. We're almost out of time, but one of the things I found fairly frustrating for folks, at least in the general market, to close the gap between employer and employee, is frankly how employers seek prospective employees. And what I mean by that is it seems like most companies now are internet born. So it used to be when I was young looking, trying to build a career, if I wanted a job really bad, I'd go to 100 places. I'd keep going until someone said yes. But I had to use shoe leather, to use the old saying. I was out knocking on doors, and here's my resume, can I talk? And it feels like nowadays the employers have got this big, gigantic wall they use with the internet, and then they'll sit around and opine that they can't find employees. Well, the employees, they could have hundreds of applications, but frankly, it's just not possible for anybody to ferret out the 10 candidates they like to talk to out of the 300 that they've stopped from walking in their front door. Mm-hmm. And is that the same in the trades industry as it is everywhere else?
I don't think so. We've launched our own marketing situation just here in Southeast Michigan, committed to about $300,000 on an ad campaign. People can go online and research videos of what each trade is about, and it's been a very, very successful campaign for us. We're really getting a lot of hits on that. So, we have such a great working relationship with our contractors in the construction industry. Our apprenticeship training is done collectively through trusted boards, through management and labor side. So
how do prospective listeners that want to reach out, get some education, find themselves a career in your environment, how do they find you, Patrick? What's the next step for folks to reach out to your group? Well,
they can visit our website. I've got a website at www.miconstructioncareers.org. That's miconstructioncareers.org. and they can go right online, and it'll take them to various links from around the state, plugging them into contacts with our training centers around the state.
Listen, Patrick Devlin, I appreciate very much you joining us this morning, and keep up the great work, my friend.
Well, tell the guy that kept the gutters out of the balls out of the gutter, he's done a great job. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jim. And thank you, Mike.
Very, very nice, sir. Have a great day. Thank you very much. Folks, we're going to be right back with an extra guest.
And back to the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com and your host, Mike Hewitt.
Hey, listen, we've got, an extra guest, and I'm kind of excited about this because I want to dive right into it. On the line with us right now is Matt Maddock, who is working to get some exposure to an organization, battlecrymichigan.com. Matt, welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show. Tell us what it is you're doing, Matt.
Good morning, Ms. Keegan. Good morning, Mike. Well, you know what? The sound that's ringing all throughout Michigan right now is the sound of frustrated Republican voters who feel betrayed, and Lansing right now just has so much contempt for us right now. That's the way I'm feeling. I woke up this morning just so frustrated when I heard about the news last night, and Battle Cry is there's a step in the right direction to try to purify our party, to bring our Republican Party back to our constitutional values and our core principles. We just have too many people in Lansing that have wandered off that pasture that are, in my opinion, acting immorally by continually raising our taxes and increasing our taxes and fees and putting additional burden on Michigan families.
See, in my view, I think this is an electoral issue, and I passionately believe that. By the way, although I know I'm in the minority in that approach. A lot of folks are yelling about the party, and in my view, by the way, I think this is Governor Snyder. Outside of this particular issue, I think he's created a Frankenstein majority, and what I mean to say is the Democratic Party and about a third of the legislative Republican caucus have joined to create this Frankenstein majority. And so now, on the other hand, I have to give the devil his due. Not that I'm calling Governor Snyder a devil, but during his terms, they have advanced some good things. Right to work is a great thing, and a number of others. But when I look at this, I wrote this morning, I've been watching Lansing politics since the 2000-2001 legislative session, and without exception, the advancing gas tax legislation is the single most bombastic, tone-deaf, arrogant thing yet. And I mean that sincerely. Imagine the blistering reasoning that it'd see a firm no from 81% of the electorate, that's both Democrat and Republican grassroots people, somehow be ferreted out to mean something totally and self-servingly different than what no means. And what I say by that is this: if they needed a gas tax, if that's truly what they needed, their approach was just flatly outrageous. Having said that, they always want more than that. And I would have been willing to say, yeah, okay, if they first changed the way the state of Michigan does business, then if it needed more money, I'd have said, okay. But you can't just say, we know we've been doing this really, really crappy, but we need more money anyhow. And if you don't like it, we're going to take it. To me, that's bordering on tyranny. When I look through my thesaurus and I try to find another way to describe it, I can't find one. Now, but what I want to caution folks, in fact, I've got a big, long debate going on Facebook on this right now. I'm not targeting the Republican Party. I'm targeting a very small percentage of the caucus, and specifically Governor Snyder. Yeah. I couldn't disagree with these folks It is not possible for me to disagree with them any more passionately than that, which is why after some great thought I decided that I needed to get you on. So what is your approach to this? What's the cure from your point of view, Matt?
Well, all too often the Republican Party leadership stands mute on these issues. They should be the ones fighting with us and for Michigan families. They just can't sit back and watch this happen. They have an inherent responsibility to hold our Republican, I call them imposters, accountable to us and our party. Someone has to draw the line somewhere, and someone has to hold these guys accountable. And if the party's not willing to do it, and if our Republican leadership is not willing to do it, we are. We are going to take back our party.
What's the mechanism? How do you do that?
Well, there's several steps. Everyone's played Capture the Flag, right? Well, our
Sure.
first capture, the first flag that we are going to go after and we are going to capture is going to be the state party executive committee or state party committee. Last election cycle, we came approximately between 50 to 60 votes shy of taking over that executive committee for the party. And once we do that, there's a very good likelihood we will render the current party leadership. We're going to probably take the whole party. I'm talking about the local. I'm talking about the Michigan Republican Party.
Sure, I know what you're talking about. Where you and I disagree, Matt, and we do this respectfully, by the way. I'm not trying to be contrary with you, but I genuinely believe that this isn't necessarily a party problem, but it belongs squarely to two groups of people. The first is Governor Snyder and those few that follow him, and then secondly, again, I don't think it's a party issue. I think it's an electoral issue. The folks, and I often use Ted Kennedy as an example. The guy murdered a pregnant woman, and then they reelected him for several more terms. There's a huge disconnect, but it's on an electoral level.
We want to build the party, okay?
Yep.
Once they have the megaphone, the megaphone broadcasts the message of the Republican Party in Michigan to Republican voters and others who haven't decided what they are yet, independents, even Democrats, okay? Their message and our message is different, okay? Our message is we are going to be fighting for Michigan families. I'd like to bring this Michigan back to where it was in the 50s, where we haven't lost 500,000 manufacturing jobs. We've gained 1 million manufacturing jobs. I want everyone to have a cabin up north like it used to be. I want all these manufacturing shops sitting in Hazel Park and all these other areas, including Muskegon, to be operating again.
Listen, Matt, you and I agree on these things. I think the goal is I think our goals are absolutely identical. There's no question. In gas tax, we use it as a lightning rod example. We're, I think, fourth now most expensive gas, at least we will as soon as governor gets done inking the paper. But let me give you an example of why my perspective is the way it is, and don't hold back. If I'm wrong from your point of view, let me know. But
okay.
As a consultant, when I contract for political polling, by the way, I don't do it for the purpose of the media. I do it for the purpose of the candidate that I'm working with, so that he or she knows where they're at and what their constituency is after. So here's what I found in the last election cycle. We would run a poll of a given state representative, a sitting representative, of the issues that was being contrasted with whoever the challengers were. And 60, depending on the issue that was polled, we would typically do 5 issues on a given poll.
Right.
So we'd be asking voters, where are you on, at the time it was the Medicaid expansion, it was Common Core and those things. Where's the public on that? And so overwhelmingly, the low side was 60% against, the high side was in the 80% against, depending on what district we're referring to. And yet the state house incumbent would be supporting those things that were in contrast to what the people. But here's where my perspective comes from, Matt, is that when you look at in West Michigan example, some of the races that I consulted in there, where you have 75 or 80% of the public in disagreement with the top 5 issues of the time, and then overwhelmingly vote for that legislator, then I got to say, with the Ted Kennedy thing, it isn't Ted Kennedy's fault. It's the people that run in there with their blinders on and just hit the go button, and they don't even agree with what they're doing. I find that disconnect at an electoral level fearsome for our future.
Oftentimes, there's no alternative but to vote for the establishment backed candidate.
No, that's not, Matt. With respect, that's not true. I watched many. In fact, I was involved in several of them, primarying Republican incumbents in the last election cycle. In fact, there's a lot of folks in Lansing that still don't much care for me because of my involvement in that, and consistently, the incumbent, who their own constituents don't agree with on the top 5 issues, overwhelmingly 70 to 80% rejected the primary challenger in favor of the incumbent. And what that tells me is that they're not paying attention. That's what that tells me. Now, do I blame that on the incumbent that's doing what he or she wants, or what the House caucus or the Senate majority or the governor is telling them to do? Or do I blame that disconnect on the electorate because they're too busy watching whatever they're watching on television?
there's not a disconnect. It's a contempt for us. Okay, you can't blame. I mean, yeah, you blame the people that we elect because they don't have enough testicle fortitude to go to Lansing to start saying no, to stand up to these guys. You know, they're too concerned about getting reelected and being part of the party and getting invited to all the fundraisers and all this other junk, you know?
Yeah,
that's destroying our party.
Matt, honest, where you and I disagree is I think you're taking the populist approach to it, which is, by the way, I acknowledge it. I understand the rationale. I really do. So I'm not trying to debate you, but I've been through enough campaigns, both as a candidate and as a consultant, dealing with incumbents where the electorate says one thing and then runs in there and votes the opposite way, and that tells me that they're just not dialed in to what it is that they're doing. It's the only thing I can walk away when I see it time and time again.
But isn't his point here that maybe we need to change that? But you're acknowledging the reality.
Acknowledging. I agree with him.
He's coming up with an answer, or at least one path.
Mike, it sounds you're trying to put a blanket on our fire and you want to give up.
No, Matt.
We're going to fight these guys fiercely.
Matt, you got to understand something. Listen, just so you know, I'm not giving up, and there's no blanket on the fire. And in fact, that's why I sponsor this radio show. It's why I write books. It's why I write a lot of op-eds, because you and I are in agreement. Where our only difference is that, and I'll use Ted Kennedy as an example again. When God took Ted Kennedy out of office, those morons elected someone just like him, and so to me, it's an electoral issue. And if there are districts where you and I would have absolutely zero chance of winning. Because the folks they're more liberal than we are. It's just that simple. So do I opine because we ended up with a liberal or moderate state representative in those districts, or do I worry about helping to educate the folks that are doing the voting in those districts? Which end of the stick will have the best result?
There's a time for talk and there's a time for action, and this is a time for action.
Okay.
And we are calling all the conservatives, all the genuine Republicans in Michigan to call to this event. Okay.
Yep.
Everyone will receive specific marching orders. They will walk out of this event. They will know exactly what to do. They will have a list of exactly what to do in order to accomplish our task.
Tell us what and where the event is.
It's in Battle Creek, Michigan, at the Firekeepers Casino. If you go to the website battlecrymichigan.com, you'll find more information on the event. It's going to be a 2-day event of Friday, Saturday, January 29th and 30th. We have Stephen Crowder's booked. We also have there's 2 young guys who ran the Dave Brandt campaign to take down Eric Cantor. These 2 guys in their 20s are very aggressive, very smart campaign managers, and they're going to be assisting us. They just published a book, How to Bag a Rhino, and they're going to be 2 of our featured guests. And we're also working on we're also working on another national speaker that has not been. We haven't booked him yet. We're just in the process of negotiation. But another national, well-known conservative, grassroots, genuine Republican commentator too.
Very, very good. Listen, in the greater side of this, just so you know, I agree with what your end result is in terms of steering the Republican Party back to its limited government and liberty principles.
Yep.
So in that much, I absolutely am in agreement with you. Tell me one more time before we go, just so folks can find it. What's the .com and when are the dates?
BattleCryMichigan.com, BattleCry Michigan.com, January 29th and 30th in Battle Creek, Michigan. How appropriate! And this will be a political event, and this will change the political landscape in Michigan for years to come. And we'd love to have everyone involved. If you're sitting at home and you want to just throw your shoe at the radio right now or the television, we want you to join us. We're going to have at least 1,000 people there, and we'd like to have 500 of the 1,000 or half the crowd, people who have never attended a political event who are Republicans that are ashamed to call themselves Republicans. We're going to make you proud to be a Republican again.
Matt Maddock, I wish you the absolute best, and I appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Okay, folks, we're going to go to a break, but we'll be back with the Enigma Report.
And back to the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And it is time. You may have been dreading it. You may be looking forward to it. But it has arrived, and you can't do anything about it. It's the Enigma Report.
Love it.
Give us the call.
Oh, you want the call?
Why not? Let's get right into this.
You want the call?
You got it, so? Did you lose the call?
I lost it for a second.
Oh, my goodness.
We still have time. Do we still have time for the call?
Sure.
Okay.
I think we do.
I think I got discombobulated.
Nothing worse than being discombobulated.
Discombobulation is just, it's almost an enigma, if you think about it.
It is an enigma.
You know, it's an enigma that is hard to recover from, but sometimes you just have to bounce back and get in the game.
Is this a savable circumstance?
I think so.
Oh, my goodness. Can you picture people driving on the road going, what the heck are those morons doing? I love it. Listen, folks, the enigma to me today is the country mouse versus the city mouse, the Civil War. And it is a civil war. And by the way, it's been happening as long as there's been city mice and country mice. It has always been that way. So what I'm wanting to do, folks, if I might, is I want to try to segment the Enigma Report into two distinctly different topics. The first is to identify the fact that there really is a civil war between the two, and maybe we can talk about how it manifests itself. And in the second half of this little conversation, let's focus on some very absolute cures, how it should have been, the way it was, how it was intended, because it doesn't have to be an actual civil war. There is a remedy advanced forward by our founding fathers that allowed for those two mice to exist in the same union of states without shooting at each other. There's a mechanism, and it's really so obvious. People are going to go, what a head smacker. That was just so doggone obvious. So, Matt and Jim, have you ever heard of the Civil War between the city and the country mice?
I think I read a book about it when I was a kid.
And I have
a
not.
little book.
I have not.
No, never heard about it. Listen, somebody sent an article that was almost eerie because it was written yesterday. And where was it? The L.A. Times or somewhere? It was an op-ed.
Well, it was Richard Victor Davis Hanson, who is an extraordinarily deep thinker, and he did write an article titled "How the Widening Urban-Rural Divide Threatens America," which I suspect is what you're talking about.
It really is. It was right spot on with what I wanted this Enigma Report to be, but I really wanted to get into the nuts and the bolts of it. If we lived where we live here in West Michigan, we don't necessarily need the pile of regulations we would have to have if we lived on the 8th floor in some high-rise in New York or somewhere in L.A. or Watts, L.A. or Chicago where you've got people piled up on top of each other. In fact, we had founding fathers write about the fact that when we got to the point where people were piled on top of each other, one after another, like they do in Europe, that would become as corrupt as Europe. So when you look at it from that point of view, if you got 100 people living on a postage stamp, you're going to have some problems. And so the correction for that is obviously they got to regulate everything. You're breathing too much. We got to regulate the breathing. But if you're a person living out in Montana or Western Michigan, you don't necessarily need to have a mountain of regulations and taxation, by the way, Lansing. You don't have to have that for you to live as civilly. What do you think, guys? Is this is it that simple?
You know, it's funny. My uncle called me the other day, and he begging me right now to move to Texas.
Yep.
And he said, you're in a state, and I thought, there's no way this is possible. You're in a state just like California. Like, what? I'm in a Republican-controlled state. He goes, no, you're the same way Californians are taxing their way out of the problem or regulating their way out of the problem, the same as California. Texas isn't doing that. They're not buying what you're saying. They're doing their own thing.
They really are. It's the one of the things that's changed in America is you had both Teddy Roosevelt and then Hoover there after him. Both of them ran on rugged individualism, on the concept of Americanism, which is when we think that we're an exceptional country, it's because we have been always seeing us, even folks back in that era. In fact, that article you and I talked about, Jim, makes reference to the fact that there was a time in America where even the city folks looked with respect at those who could live off the land and could take care of themselves. But when you have 100 people on a postage stamp, it's just not possible to have that kind of thing. But that's not, by the way, to dismiss their ruggedness, which is where the Tarzan call comes from. I mentioned when we opened the show today that there's an episode of Tarzan with Johnny Weissmuller when he has to go to New York to save Boy. And it really was a great depiction on the difference, even back in the 30s, or 42, I think it was. It showed the difference between city and country really well. So you have to have different sets of legislation.
Well, there's a difference. You have different legislation.
Yep.
For instance, you need, or you may need, mass transportation in a large city. You certainly don't need mass transportation in a rural area. The difference is that the city folks, who overwhelmingly tend to be Democrats, don't have the money to pay for these wonderful ideas that they come up with. And they then say, well, we are going to, number one, we're going to spend money we don't have by virtue of making promises to employees, retirements, or making significant borrowing within their cities or their states, for that matter. And we are going to require those who have said, look, we don't want to live this lifestyle. We don't like living in the big city for whatever reason. We want to make other people pay for our desires. That's an enigma to me that they can get away with it.
The enigma to me is that our founders left us with a federalist system of government. What was supposed to happen with that is that folks would vote with their feet. And what I mean to say when I say that is if you happen to be a rugged individual that didn't want to find yourself in New York piled up to the ceiling with other people, or didn't want to see yourself sitting on a stack of taxes and regulation that was knee deep, you could get up on your tennis shoes and walk across to another state. You could get up and go to Montana, go to, at the time, California, go to wherever you wanted. You could say, what best fits my lifestyle? And what that did, what the effect of that was supposed to be was that the states had to compete for you. And so they were all,
and for businesses.
And for
You're
businesses,
right, exactly.
They were great experiments to say, which of these many formulas, by the way, including the Uber left, including the Uber right. This isn't me taking a party stance or an ideological stance. It was me taking an American stance that federalism recognized that people had different ways of conducting their government affairs, and the different states could represent those. If you don't want to be here, be there then.
Those days are gone.
But it started shifting following the Civil War. When we went from plural United States, many states, to singular United States, and a state no longer had the right to secede. And by the way, I'm not calling for secession, but that's when it started changing.
Well, it may have started then, Mike, but it certainly has really ramped up in the last 10, 20 years. And I'll give you a classic example.
But listen, there's been ebb, and I'll stop in a second, but there's been ebb and flows to its ramping up going back to the Civil War, and I would use President Wilson with his federal tax as a great example.
FDR put the nail on the coffin.
FDR twisted us all up. Johnson was no friend to poor people.
Well, let's be clear. You've got wonderful examples, but in terms of money, there ain't no money there. You want real money? The city of Detroit is in the midst of building a $500 million new hockey arena. Now, the city of Detroit, as you may be aware, ain't got no money. All of this money, virtually all of this money, is coming from, apparently, the roads and the potholes, because the state tells us, for some reason, that they have plenty of money to build a new hockey arena, which, by the way, requires the destruction, the tearing down of the Joe Louis Arena, which is just an incredible compliment to that concept. But they don't have money for roads. They had to just last night pass a $1.2 billion increase. Remember, now, this isn't a $1.2 billion increase in toto. This is a $1.2 billion increase every single year on the employers, the businesses, and the homeowners within our state. So what we have going here is situations like Detroit. Why did Detroit, after all of these decades of suicidal decisions, why did Detroit all of a sudden start getting billions upon billions of dollars? Because it failed. It absolutely, totally collapsed. That's what's going on in this country today. We are rewarding failure. The Detroit school system, which has just reported with, I suppose, some level of humility, that of the 8th graders in the Detroit school system, 7% are proficient in reading. In other words, 7% of the students there are able to read, which, by the way, they don't teach reading after 7th grade. And 4% are proficient in arithmetic. What's the answer to that? We're going to up the amount of money that we're giving the Detroit school system, which is already over $18,000 per student. In this country today, failure is the way you succeed, at least in terms of getting money from the rural people back into the cities.
Listen, it's not possible to debate you because you're right, except for this.
I'd love to hear that. Can we repeat that? Can you save that, Mr. Studio Boss?
It's scary, isn't it?
I'll lock it up into a safe. The archived precious moments during the Mike Hewitt Show.
Precious moments. Thank you so much.
I didn't think you had enough memory for that little spiel he came forward with. But listen, but what's supposed to happen is, first off, Detroit and Grand Rapids are separate cities. What they do in Detroit should be Detroit's business, and if they can't pay for it, boo-hoo, they got a problem.
And those days are gone.
That's what it should be. On the other hand, the federalism allows for the fact that if you and I say we have had enough, we don't want the 4th highest gas tax, we don't want to build arenas down there in that joint, we don't want to do these things, we can get up on our high horse and ride on across the border and go find a state where the climate for common sense is a little greater.
40% of the Michigan budget.
Yep.
40% of the budget of the state of Michigan comes from federal dollars. So you may move away, just like you may have moved away from Detroit.
Yep.
But the man is going to be after you, after your money, after your children's money, and after, even more importantly, after your employer's money.
Here's another enigma, since we're collecting enigmas in this enigma section. If you watch how our federal government handles governments that are not in agreement with us, for instance, in the Middle East, is they fund them. They use money as a hook. What we did in Egypt, what we did in Libya, what we've done it in almost all of the countries of folks. We use money as the hook.
We learned that works here, though.
But that's the irony to it. They're doing the exact same thing from our central government to the states and to the people that they do to folks that we perceive as hating America. They control us and bribe us and put us into financial bondage.
Oh, you want money for that? Make your drinking age 21. Oh, you want money for that? You better have the state proficiency in education. Oh, you want money for that? You better.
We're going to give you a blob of money, but here's the list of 53 conditions that you have to meet. And you know what we keep doing as a people? We keep either pretending it didn't happen, which is the real problem in my view, is that the electorate is not paying attention. They just aren't. If I did this, whatever the audience is for this show, it would be 100 times greater if it was a sex-driven show. If that's all we talked about was outrageous populist, sex-toned data.
Actually, you could do that talking about politicians.
Did you watch that election last night?
Probably full of show.
I can't go there. That was such a great thing. That was. Anyhow, here's the point: is that we've got to find a way to educate the electorate. But to do that, we've got to make the electorate want to be educated. Is there a tipping point? Will at some point the distance get so great that they'll suddenly wake up, or are we just going to ride this right into the dirt?
Yeah, people start coming in your homes and you get sandered. And I say that meaning Bernie Sanders style. Oh, you got stuff in your pantry I don't. I'm coming in.
Very, very nice, folks. Find us at Facebook /The Mike Hewitt Show. See you next Wednesday.